They taught you Marcus Garvey was a fraud, a dreamer who got too big for his britches, a businessman who couldn't run a business. They gave you one court case, one mail fraud conviction, 3 broken ships, and told you that's the whole story. But here's what they didn't tell you. At his peak, Marcus Garvey commanded the largest black mass movement in American history. Millions of members worldwide, hundreds of chapters across 25 countries, an organization so powerful that J. Edgar Hoover himself admitted Garvey hadn't broken any laws, but decided to destroy him anyway. The Bureau of Investigation hired its first black agents specifically to infiltrate Garvey's movement. They watched him. They planted spies in his organization. They searched desperately for any way to silence him. And when they finally took him down on one flimsy mail fraud charge, they didn't just lock up a man, they killed a movement. But why does history remember the failed ships and not the millions who followed him? Why do your textbooks spend paragraphs on business mistakes, but barely mention the FBI surveillance? Today, we're exposing how America turned the man who terrified the entire system into just another cautionary tale about black people who dream too big. Let me take you back to August 1920, Madison Square Garden. 25,000 black people packed inside, thousands more outside, unable to get in. The largest gathering of black folks this country had ever seen. And at the center of it all stood Marcus Garvey, not begging white America for integration, not asking permission to sit at anyone's lunch counter. He was talking about something that made the powers that be absolutely lose their minds. Economic independence. Black-owned ships, black-owned factories, black-owned banks. A global network of black commerce that didn't need white approval or white capital. He called it the Universal Negro Improvement Association, the UNIA, and it was growing faster than anything the government had ever seen. Picture what that looked like on the ground. In Cleveland alone, over 5,000 members. In Harlem, they had Liberty Hall, a building that held 6,000 people. The Negro World newspaper reached readers across 3 continents. Colonial governments in the Caribbean were so terrified of Garvey's message, they banned the paper outright. You had black dock workers in Jamaica reading the same articles as black farmers in Alabama and black intellectuals in London, all of them hearing the same revolutionary message. You don't need white people to save you. You can build your own economy, your own power, your own future. Now ask yourself, how much of a threat would that be to a system built entirely on black people staying dependent and divided? That's where J. Edgar Hoover comes in. And this is where it gets real dark. In October 1919, Hoover wrote a memo about Marcus Garvey. The memo is public record now. You can read it yourself. Hoover admitted straight up that Garvey had violated no federal laws. Read that again. No federal laws broken. But Hoover wrote that Garvey should be deported anyway. Why? Because Garvey was, in Hoover's own words, stirring up racial consciousness. The man who would later run the FBI for nearly 50 years saw black pride as a crime worthy of deportation. And here's the move that should tell you everything. In 1919, Hoover hired the FBI's first black agent, not to fight crime in black communities, not to protect black people, to go undercover and spy on Marcus Garvey. His name was James Wormley Jones, code number 800. Jones infiltrated the UNIA. He attended meetings. He gained trust. He reported back everything he saw. For years, the Bureau watched and waited for Garvey to slip up. And while they were watching Garvey's every move, you know what they weren't watching? The white mobs that burned down Black Wall Street in Tulsa in 1921. The hundreds of black people being lynched across the South. Those somehow didn't require special agents or federal task forces. But a black man telling black people to start their own businesses? That got round-the-clock surveillance. Now let's talk about the Black Star Line, because this is where history loves to point and laugh. In 1919, Garvey launched a shipping company. The idea was simple but revolutionary. Black people would own the ships. Black captains would command them. They would transport goods and passengers between black communities in America, the Caribbean, and Africa. No white middlemen taking cuts. No white approval needed. Garvey sold stock at $5 a share to everyday black people, porters, maids, factory workers. People who had never owned stock in anything suddenly owned a piece of something that was theirs. The Black Star Line raised hundreds of thousands of dollars. Think about what that means. In 1919, when most black people in the South were sharecroppers barely surviving, Garvey convinced hundreds of thousands of working-class black folks to invest in a vision of black economic power. But here's where it all started falling apart. The ships Garvey bought were disasters. The first one, the Yarmouth, renamed the Frederick Douglass, was old and overpriced. It broke down constantly. The company lost over $130,000 on that ship alone. The second ship, the Shadyside, literally sank. The third, the Kanawha, had a boiler explosion that killed a man. By 1922, the Black Star Line was finished. Total losses over $1 million. And yeah, Garvey's people mismanaged the whole operation. Terrible accounting, poor decisions, inexperienced staff. All of that is true. But here's what else is true. Those same FBI agents who had been watching Garvey for 3 years, they were inside the Black Star Line. Garvey himself claimed employees were being paid to sabotage operations. Ships mysteriously breaking down, parts going missing, money vanishing from accounts. We can't prove every claim of sabotage, but we know for a fact the FBI had infiltrated the company, and we know they were looking for any evidence to take Garvey down. In January 1922, the federal government finally made its move. They arrested Marcus Garvey on charges of mail fraud. The charge was that Garvey had used the mail to sell stock in the Black Star Line while knowing the company was failing. Basically, they said he scammed his own people. Now here's where you need to pay close attention to what they actually had. The key piece of evidence was an empty envelope. An envelope with a Black Star Line advertisement stamp on it, allegedly mailed to a man named Benny Dancy. That was it. An empty envelope. No letter inside promising false returns. No fraudulent claims. Just an envelope with a company stamp. That was the evidence that would destroy the largest black movement in America. The trial started in May 1923, and Garvey made a decision that would seal his fate. He fired his lawyer and decided to represent himself. Now, Garvey was a brilliant speaker, a powerful organizer, a visionary thinker, but he was not a lawyer. And he was going up against the entire federal justice system. The trial was a disaster. Garvey couldn't navigate the legal technicalities. He couldn't properly cross-examine witnesses. His co-defendants, 3 other Black Star Line officers, all had lawyers. All 3 were acquitted. But Garvey, defending himself, was convicted on 1 count. 1 single count out of all the charges they threw at him. On June 18, 1923, the judge sentenced him to 5 years in federal prison. And that's exactly how they get away with it, by the way. If you want more hidden stories like this, subscribe to Black Stories Untold. Now, back to what happened next. Garvey's lawyers immediately appealed. The case went all the way up. And while they fought in court, something interesting started happening. Regular people, black and white, started asking questions. How did the other 3 defendants get acquitted, but Garvey got 5 years? What kind of fraud case hangs on an empty envelope? Even some of the jurors started having second thoughts. 9 of the 12 jurors who convicted Garvey eventually signed an affidavit asking the government to reduce his sentence. Think about that. 9 jurors said, after the fact, that maybe this wasn't right. But it didn't matter. In February 1925, after all appeals failed, Marcus Garvey walked into Atlanta Federal Penitentiary. He spent nearly 2 years in prison, and the UNIA, without its leader, started falling apart. Chapters closed. Membership dropped. The movement that had terrified the government was being neutralized exactly as planned. But pressure kept building for Garvey's release. A petition with 70,000 signatures reached President Calvin Coolidge. Letters poured in from across the country, and in November 1927, Coolidge made his move. He didn't pardon Garvey. He commuted his sentence, set him free. And on December 2nd, 1927, federal agents put Marcus Garvey on a ship in New Orleans and deported him to Jamaica. He never set foot in America again. Now here's where the story gets buried. After Garvey was gone, history started rewriting what happened. The FBI surveillance, barely mentioned. The fact that Hoover targeted him before any crimes were committed, conveniently forgotten. The context of what Garvey was actually advocating and why that terrified the system, erased. Instead, you got a simple story. Marcus Garvey was a charismatic but incompetent leader who ran a crooked business and got what was coming to him. They turned a story about systematic government suppression of Black economic independence into a story about one man's personal failures. And that switch, that reframing, is the lie we're talking about. Because let's be clear about what really happened here. Garvey made real mistakes. The Black Star Line was genuinely mismanaged. The ships were genuine disasters. The accounting was genuinely messy. Those criticisms are fair. But here's the question history doesn't want you to ask. Why did this business failure get a federal prosecution when white businessmen failed all the time with no consequences? Why did this particular failure require years of FBI surveillance, undercover agents, and a show trial? The answer is simple. It wasn't about fraud. It was about power. Garvey was teaching millions of Black people that they didn't need to wait for white people to grant them freedom. They could build it themselves. And the moment that message started taking hold, the full weight of the federal government came down on his head. And it worked. After Garvey's deportation, no Black leader would attempt anything on that scale for decades. The lesson was clear. Try to build independent Black economic power, and you'll be destroyed. Ask politely for integration. Maybe we'll listen. But start talking about Black-owned banks, Black-owned ships, Black-owned factories that don't need white capital. That's when you become a federal target. That's when you get the surveillance, the infiltration, the prosecution. Garvey's conviction didn't just punish one man. It sent a message to every Black person in America about what happens when you dream too big. Now, let's jump forward. For decades after his deportation, Marcus Garvey was treated as a historical footnote, a cautionary tale. But something started changing in the 1980s. Historians started digging through the FBI files that had been released under the Freedom of Information Act. They found Hoover's memos admitting no laws were broken, but targeting Garvey anyway. They found evidence of the infiltration. They found the surveillance reports. And they started asking the same questions we're asking now. A massive research project collected over 30,000 documents related to Garvey. Scholars started publishing new work showing the true scale of the UNIA and the systematic nature of the suppression. The story was being rewritten. In 1987, the House Judiciary Committee held hearings on Marcus Garvey. After reviewing all the evidence, they concluded that Garvey was innocent, that the prosecution was unjust. But they said there was no legal mechanism to exonerate a dead man. So the finding just sat there. Official acknowledgement that he was wrongly convicted, but no action taken. Congressional representatives, particularly from the Congressional Black Caucus, kept introducing resolutions calling for full exoneration. They went nowhere. For decades, the official record stayed the same: convicted fraudster. Until January 19, 2025, President Joe Biden's last full day in office. Biden issued a posthumous pardon for Marcus Garvey. The White House statement acknowledged that Garvey had been targeted for his political advocacy, that the prosecution was part of a broader effort to suppress 3 broken ships, not messy accounting, the movement. And when you understand that, you understand why the story had to be rewritten. You can't let future generations know that millions of Black people once built something this powerful. Can't let them know it took the FBI, federal prosecutors, and a show trial to bring it down. Because if you knew that, you might start asking, what would happen if Black people tried it again today? What if millions of Black Americans today organized around economic independence? What if they pooled resources, started banks, built businesses that didn't need white capital or white approval? What if they connected those efforts to Black communities globally? Would that threaten the system? You already know the answer, and that's exactly why they buried Marcus Garvey under a pile of failed business stories. The fraud conviction wasn't the end of Marcus Garvey's story. It was the tool they used to end his movement, and for 100 years, it worked. History books reduced him to a cautionary tale, but the truth is finally coming out. The files are public. The scholars have done the work. The government itself has admitted it. Marcus Garvey was destroyed because he was effective, not because he was fraudulent. And the real lie isn't about mail fraud. The real lie is pretending that this was ever about business at all. And the real lie isn't about mail fraud. The real lie is pretending that this was ever about business at all. This was Black Stories Untold. And as always, thanks for watching. If you want more stories like this, click the video on your screen now.